Today we will going to discuss about a chapter, new chapter called Hypothalamus. आज हम लोग hypothalamus के बारे में पढ़ेंगे. Hypothalamus we have studied till now, and that hypothalamus is a very important organ for endocrine functions, as well as neuro. You can say it is a neuroendocrine organ. So nervous system का एक ऐसा portion है जो कि endocrine functions में भी बहुत help करता है. इन सब के अलावा हाइपोथैलेमस के और भी बहुत रोल हैं. So we will read that things all more details about hypothalamus today. So क्या क्या आज हम लोग पढ़ेंगे. Today we decided hypothalamus under the different learning objectives. So we will study about the anatomical aspects. In that we will read about the relations of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus के relations कैसे कहाँ पे इसके सराउंडिंग में कौन कौन से स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं ब्रेन में. एंड देन वी स्टडी अबाउट द न्यूक्लियाई और द वेरियस न्यूक्लियाई ऑफ हाइपोथैलेमस. देन वी रीड अबाउट द वेरियस फंक्शंस ऑफ हाइपोथैलेमस. इन दिस टॉपिक फंक्शंस ऑफ हाइपोथैलेमस वी विल रीड इन डिटेल. आज हम लोग टॉपिक थोड़ा सा डिटेल पढ़ेंगे जिसमें पर्टिकुलरली इंडोक्राइन फंक्शंस. इट विल बी रिवीजन. आई थिंक मोस्ट ऑफ द इंडोक्राइन फंक्शंस आपको बताए जा चुके हैं इंडोक्राइन चैप्टर में जब पिट्यूटरी ग्लैंड पढ़ाए गए थे, तो उसमें आपको हाइपोथैलेमस का रोल आपको पता है ऑलरेडी. वी विल रीड अबाउट द फीडबैक लूप, दैट इज द लार्ज लॉन्ग लूप एंड स्मॉल लूप्स, नेगेटिव फीडबैक लूप. एंड देन अदर फंक्शंस लाइक इट्स इन्वॉल्वमेंट इन द लिम्बिक सिस्टम, सो द कंट्रोलिंग द इमोशंस एंड फियर, रेज, इस सब कंडीशंस के टाइम में हाइपोथैलेमस कैसे मदद करता है. वी विल रीड अबाउट इट्स रोल इन द ऑटोनॉमिक रेगुलेशन. हाइपोथैलेमस का क्या ऑटोनॉमिक रेगुलेशन में रोल है ये पढ़ेंगे. देन वी विल रीड अबाउट हाउ हाइपोथैलेमस हैज रोल इन द स्लीप वेक साइकिल. इट्स हेल्प फॉर द मेंटेनिंग सर्कैडियन रिदम. द डिफरेंट टाइप्स ऑफ बॉडी रिदम्स आर देयर. इस सब चीज के बारे में भी हम लोग डिस्कस करेंगे इस टॉपिक के अंदर में. एंड फाइनली वी विल रीड अबाउट द अप्लाइड एस्पेक्ट्स, दैट सम डिसऑर्डर्स एसोसिएटेड विद hypothalamus that we will read today or even tomorrow if time will over. So about hypothalamus, it is a bilateral diencephalic structure. Now I do not need to tell you what is diencephalon. You have already thalamus के chapter में भी हमने जब पढ़ा था तो we know the diencephalon means what and where it is. It is a bilateral diencephalic structure. It is a diffuse nuclear mass. This is another thing that it is a diffuse nuclear mass. Diffuse means they are scattered. Although they are located in a very small area in the brain, basically base of brain, but it is still diffusely organized. And there are so many nucleuses are making of this hypothalamus. Then it is a very small part of brain. Its weight is around 4 gram. 4 gram means it contributes very less percentage of the body weight, of the brain weight. You can say it is about 0.3 to 0.5% of the brain weight. Normal weight of brain we know is about 1400 to 1500 gram. So उसका यदि 4 gram से यदि हम रेशियो करें तो you know it will become the about 0.3. It regulates all vegetative and endocrine processes. It is the main organ of integration of homeostasis. So major functions of hypothalamus is not only these, that is the maintaining the vegetative and endocrine functions. Other than that, it has other roles also. That and the major function is the homeostasis, endocrine. Other than that, it helps in the autonomic control and the limbic system. When we say the homeostatic control, इसके अंदर ही बहुत सारी चीजें आ गई जैसे कि hunger या food intake regulation, thirst या regulation of water intake, then sexual drive, then our sleep wake cycle, then body temperature regulation. You know in more details how the hypothalamus helps in the temperature regulation. Then food intake की वजह से they also regulate our carbohydrate or the blood glucose metabolism. How they manage? These are the various roles of hypothalamus. Endocrine functions, they via the release of the pituitary hormones, either the anterior pituitary or the posterior pituitary. Autonomic control via the descending pathway to sympathetic and parasympathetic preganglionic neurons, and limbic function via the connections to the limbic system, and thus regulating emotional behavior. So इस तरह से hypothalamus के functions को 4 major divisions में बांटे गए. We will read these functions, but not in these divisions. We will read as details of individual functions. Before going to that, first read about the location, boundary and relations. About the location, boundary and relations, the lateral wall and floor of third ventricle, they are situated below the thalamus. That is, it is basically hypothalamus. Lateral wall of hypothalamus is, and the floor is below the thalamus. It is hypothalamus is situated above by hypothalamic sulcus. ये वाला जो लाइन खींचा गया, that is hypothalamic sulcus. So this area is basically the hypothalamus in this area, and then there is base of brain. इसके नीचे ये base of brain, इस area को कहा जाता है base of brain. You can see this is called base of brain. Then anteriorly there is lamina terminalis. This is basically anteriorly. It is the lamina terminalis. And then posteriorly the vertical plane. It is the imaginary plane showing the, and that is behind the mammillary body. ये portion है, this portion is the mammillary body. This is basically mammillary body. It is the part of the hypothalamus. Then laterally by the internal capsule and medially by the third ventricle. These are the important relations of hypothalamus. कैसे ये किस जगह पे हैं. So because we have dealt in detail about the basal ganglia and thalamus previously, we can easily imagine the area or the place where the hypothalamus is located. Just if you can see here, it is located, and it is connected with the pituitary stalk, and you know it is the infundibulum, and it's a close relation with the optic chiasma. Optic chiasma के साथ भी इसका close relation है. You know the optic chiasma is the place where two optic nerves they cross each other. And these are the basically few relations of the hypothalamus. Relations आपको एग्जाम में एनाटॉमी में पूछे जाते हैं basically, so you can write these points as a relations of hypothalamus. Anteriorly, there is interventricular foramen. So you can understand that it's close relation with the third ventricle, and medially it is basically the third ventricle. This is basically interventricular foramens, the A wala the portion. This is lateral ventricle, and this is the third ventricle. So dorsally it is the lateral ventricle. Medially it is having the third ventricle. Anteriorly interventricular foramen. Laterally there is internal capsule. Laterally there is this area, internal capsule, and ventrally there is a subthalamus and the hypothalamus. So it is basically the relation of the thalamus. Thalamus के relation को दिखाया है, तो you can understand कि you can correlate the relations of hypothalamus. Basically this diagram is the, and about the subdivisions and nuclei of hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is divided into two major zones, medial zone and lateral zone, and these two zones have been further divided into 4 regions. Hypothalamus को 4 regions में divide किया गया. उसमें भी 3 regions are very much important, and the name of these regions are the supraoptic, tuberal, and the mammillary regions. There is one region that is called the preoptic region. So finally there are 4 regions of hypothalamus, and under that there are many nuclei. इन सभी रीजन्स के अंदर डिफरेंट न्यूक्लियाई होते हैं। इन न्यूक्लियाई के नेम इस तरह के हैं: प्री ऑप्टिक न्यूक्लियाई, सुप्रा ऑप्टिक न्यूक्लियाई, देन देयर इज सुप्रा काइजमेटिक, anterior, paraventricular, dorsal, lateral, tubular, ventromedial, and arcuate nuclei. So there are so many nuclei, and we will read now region-wise distribution of these nuclei. कि कैसे कैसे ये regions divided हैं और उनके अंदर कैसे कैसे nuclei हैं. So we will read about this. This is basically showing you the nuclei of hypothalamus, various nuclei of hypothalamus. अब हम वेरियस न्यूक्लियाई ऑफ हाइपोथैलेमस के बारे में देखेंगे। यू कैन सी हियर, दिस इज बेसिकली द पिट्यूटरी ग्लैंड, दिस इज द पिट्यूटरी स्टॉक एंड दिस लूप, दिस लाइन यू कैन सी इट इज बेसिकली द प्लेस कॉल्ड एज द ऑप्टिक काइजमा। तो इसे ऑप्टिक काइजमा और यहाँ पे क्रॉस करता है। सो दिस इज इट्स क्लोज रिलेशन एंड ये जो है दिस इज कॉल्ड एंटीरियर कमीशन। एंटीरियर कमीशन के आसपास का जो रीजन है जो दैट इज कॉल्ड प्री ऑप्टिक रीजन एंड इट कंटेन्स न्यूक्लियाई दैट इज कॉल्ड प्री ऑप्टिक न्यूक्लियाई। ये रीजन को प्री ऑप्टिक रीजन या प्री ऑप्टिक न्यूक्लियाई कहा जाता है। तो इस तरह से यदि रीजन वाइज डिवाइड किए जाएं तो यू कैन सी देयर इज वन रीजन दैट इज सेपरेटेड बाय दिस टाइप ऑफ डॉटेड लाइंस। सो इस डॉटेड लाइन से रीजन्स को आप सेपरेट कर सकते हैं। So this is one region. Next region of hypothalamus is called as supra optic region, and supra optic region के अंदर there are the nuclei are supra optic nuclei. There is another nuclei called supra chiasmatic nuclei जो यहाँ पे नहीं दिख रहा। Basically it should be located here. It should be a supra chiasmatic nuclei placed very close to the supraoptic, and then there is an anterior hypothalamic area, basically anterior hypothalamic and the paraventricular nuclei. So this is the second region. This region is called as supraoptic region. उससे पहले वाला जो dotted line के आगे जो region था that was the preoptic region. Third region of hypothalamus is called as middle region. थर्ड रीजन को मिडिल रीजन कहा जाता है। इसके अंदर जो है जो न्यूक्लियाई आते हैं दीज आर मेनली लेटरल हाइपोथैलेमिक न्यूक्लियाई, देन देयर इज डोर्सल हाइपोथैलेमिक न्यूक्लियाई, देन देयर इज डोर्सोमीडियल एंड फोर्थ वन इज द वेंट्रोमीडियल। सो ये जो रीजन है दिस रीजन इज कॉल्ड मिडिल रीजन। इट इज आल्सो कॉल्ड एज ट्यूबेरल रीजन। इसको सिनेरम ट्यूबेरम के नाम से के एरिया में है। सो इट इज कॉल्ड एज ट्यूबेरल रीजन। इट विल कम इन द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड्स आल्सो। एंड लास्ट और द फोर्थ रीजन इज कॉल्ड एज मैमिलरी रीजन। इसके अंदर जो न्यूक्लियाई आते हैं दैट इज कॉल्ड मैमिलरी बॉडी, एंड देन देयर इज द पोस्टीरियर हाइपोथैलेमिक एंड सो दीज आर द वेरियस न्यूक्लियाई। ये वाला न्यूक्लियाई लेवल नहीं किया गया। I will show you in the slides. So this is the again showing you the various nuclei, names of the various nuclei located in that. Basically, this is basically the arcuate nucleus. This is basically the how the various nuclei are there. Located surrounding the third ventricle. Third ventricle surrounding में किस तरह से nuclei located है? There is one is called dorsomedial nuclei and then another is ventromedial nuclei. So dorsomedial and the ventromedial. So this is dorsomedial, this is ventromedial. Again it is ventromedial, it is dorsomedial. So this is basically the two nuclei which surround the third ventricle. Then there is a fornix. It is basically not the part of hypothalamus, but it is situated here. Then you can notice here the other nuclei like the lateral tubular nuclei. Then there is lateral hypothalamic nuclei, lateral tubular, lateral hypothalamic nuclei in the both sides, and then there is a supraoptic nuclei very in close relation with the optic tract, and you can see the optic tract. There are two other nuclei. One is called the periventricular nuclei. थर्ड वेंट्रिकल के वॉल में ऐसा समझिए, दिस एरिया, दिस ब्लूइश एरिया इज कॉल्ड एज द पेरीवेंट्रिकुलर एंड अनदर न्यूक्लिया इज कॉल्ड द आर्कुएंट न्यूक्लिया। इस तरह का एक शेप बनाता है। So these are the other nuclei. So we can see, we have seen that there are various nuclei of hypothalamus and how they are related with the hypothalamus. I want you to see through these nuclei and their locations and relations in the book of neuroanatomy also. So I want you to read from that place also, so that you can have the better understanding when you correlate with this these slides. Region-wise hypothalamic nuclei, I told you that there are the 4 regions, although mainly it is called 3 regions, but 4 regions में divide किए गए हैं, and ये different colors में जो दिखाए गए हैं, these are the colors or the names of the various nuclei. So first region, region A is the pre-optic nucleus. It is also called as a separate region called as the pre-optic region. So this one is the pre-optic region. ये वाला जो green color का है. So this is called pre-optic region, and in that the pre-optic nucleus, it lies anterior to the hypothalamus along with the lamina terminalis. So this is basically, you may see here, this line is called lamina terminalis. यहाँ लेवल नहीं किया है. This line is called lamina terminalis, and इसके साथ जो ये जुड़ा हुआ है, that is called lamina terminalis. And lamina terminalis between optic chiasma and anterior commissure. This is optic chiasma. You can see here. This is optic chiasma, and this is anterior commissure. So pre-optic region and optic chiasma or anterior commissure के बीच में along the lamina terminalis these are present. So this is about the pre-optic region, and it contains one nuclei called pre-optic nuclei. Another region is called supra-optic region. Supra-optic region, I told you that they are situated very close to the pre-optic region, and these are the nuclei which are inside the supra-optic region. Supra-optic region में ये nuclei हैं. So first one is the supra-optic nuclei, जो यहाँ दिखा है. I told you that very close to that there is another nuclei called suprachiasmatic nuclei, and then there is a paraventricular nuclei, and the fourth one is the anterior hypothalamic nuclei. So these are the 4 nuclei which are present in this supraoptic region. So supraoptic region में ये nuclei present हैं. So these are the basically the names of the regional basis पे कैसे कैसे उनको nuclei को division किया है. Now coming to the tubular region, it is also called as the middle region, and the middle region contains the nuclei called the arcuate nuclei. Sometimes there is this, यहाँ पे जो infundibular stalk है, इसके अंदर भी कुछ grey matters होते हैं, and they are called infundibular or the nuclei because it is very much close to this here. You can see. So arcuate and infundibular nuclei, and then there is another nuclei called the ventromedial nuclei. Then there is the dorsomedial nuclei. Dorsomedial is not shown here. Basically, it will be okay. Here it is dorsomedial nuclei, and then there is a lateral nuclei. Lateral is not shown here. So lateral nuclei is थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा बड़ा और एरिया में spread है. That is called lateral nuclei. So इस region के अंदर में, in this region, the nuclei are basically, थोड़ा color change कर देता हूँ. In this region you can see the tubular region में there are the 4 another nuclei, and these nuclei are called as the lateral nuclei. Then there is dorsomedial. Then there is the ventromedial and arcuate, as well as the infundibular nuclei or infundibular nuclei. So these are the in the third region you can see the tubular region, and it is also called as the middle region of the hypothalamus. Now coming to the fourth one or the last region, it contains 2 group of nuclei. One is called as the very big, basically called as the mammillary body. It is bilaterally placed bodies. It looks like the basically the two protuberance, and that's why it is called as mammillary body. And the second one or area is called as the posterior hypothalamic nuclei. So ये वाला जो last area है, it contains these two regions, and the mammillary body is divided into two different portions, medial and lateral intercalated. ये भी mammillary body भी दो nuclei में divided है, medial and lateral intercalated nuclei. So these are the region-wise distribution of the names of nuclei. So अभी हमने region-wise names of nuclei पढ़े. So what we have seen that there are the four regions. One is called the preoptic area. One area is called the preoptic area. It contains preoptic nuclei. And then the second region is called as the anterior, although it is just beside or behind the preoptic region. But it contains four nuclei, that is called suprachiasmatic, supraoptic, anterior nucleus, and the paraventricular nucleus. Then in the middle region or the tubular region, it contains lateral nucleus, जो इसमें नहीं फिर से दिखाया. Then dorsomedial nucleus, ventromedial nucleus, and arcuate or infundibular nucleus, because it is in connection with the infundibular. So this is the second middle region, although I told you. And the last one or the final is the region, it contains the mammillary body as well as this posterior region, or it is also. So in the posterior region there are these two group of nuclei. So इस तरह से hypothalamus में basically आपने देखा कि 4, 4, 8, 2, 10 और एक 11 different nuclei. You can see the names of the 11 different nuclei. These regions are basically divided, and ये ज़्यादा better understanding के लिए, क्योंकि इसका physiological और anatomical standpoints better है, इसलिए region wise ही divide करना hypothalamus के लिए better तरीका है. So this is basically the division of the hypothalamus and their nuclei. Now about the functions of the selected regions of the hypothalamus. अब यहाँ रीजन वाइज इनके फंक्शंस को भी बताने का ट्राई किया गया है इस डायग्राम में, बट देयर आर सो मेनी फंक्शंस आर रिटन. I try to just go in one, otherwise these all functions we will read individually under the headings of the functions of hypothalamus. So यहाँ पे ऐसा दिखाया गया कि रीजन वाइज जो डिवाइड किए गए हैं, जैसे paraventricular and supraoptic nuclei, you must be remembering these two nuclei are important for the release of two hormones, basically the ADH and the second one is the oxytocin. So ये दो nuclei के बारे में आपने पहले भी पढ़ा हुआ है. So because they are helpful for the release of the ADH or antidiuretic hormone, other name of that is the vasopressin. So it helps in the regulation of the water balance, and they produce and their destruction causes the diabetes insipidus. And the functions of the oxytocin is that it is important for the milk ejection reflex as well as the during childbirth or the parturition reflex. So this nucleus also project to the autonomic nuclei of brain stem, so it helps in the autonomic function also. There is another nuclei of anterior nucleus of hypothalamus. You should not get confused with the nucleus of thalamus. Anterior nucleus of hypothalamus has the separate role. Anterior nucleus of thalamus has separate. Anterior nucleus of thalamus is connected with the mammillary body of hypothalamus. And जो हमने कल के क्लास में देखा था, that is the for helping in basically the emotional actions or the part of the anterior nucleus of hypothalamus is important for the heat dissipation. So it helps in the thermal regulation. It stimulates parasympathetic nervous system, and its destruction results in the hyperthermia. बहुत ज़्यादा body temperature जाता. Preoptic nuclei, they are regulating the release of gonadotropic hormones GnRH, and accordingly, because the male and female में GnRH का अलग अलग रोल है. So this nuclei is a sexually dimorphic nuclei. Means मेल में अलग morphology और अलग तरह का function और females में थोड़ा अलग. So this is basically the sexually dimorphic nuclei. There are not all nuclei are sexually dimorphic, but few important which are having the role in the sexual behavior or as well as the release of the hormones related to this reproductive system. So उन वाले nuclei के sexual dimorphic nuclei. There is another nuclei called suprachiasmatic. They receive input from the retina, and that is via the retino-hypothalamic tract. Retina से hypothalamus को एक tract जाते हैं, and there they are sending it to the suprachiasmatic nuclei of hypothalamus, and they control the circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is basically your everyday 24-hour cycle. So our body, our human functions are very much dependent or in the cyclic manner, and that manner or that rhythm is called circadian rhythm. We will read this under the functions of hypothalamus. We will read all functions जो भी अभी तक अभी यहाँ पे अभी आया. Then dorsomedial nucleus, it is helpful for the satiety and the hunger basically, and in case stimulation से dorsomedial nucleus is called as the hunger के लिए ज़्यादा important है, and that इसके वजह से यदि इसको stimulate किए तो ज़्यादा भूख लगती है, and the person can convert into obese. This type of obesity is called as the hypothalamic type of obesity. It's savage behavior. Then posterior hypothalamus is basically the thermal regulation में इसका भी role है, anterior and posterior both. Anterior hypothalamus heat को dissipate करता है, जबकि posterior hypothalamus is important for the conservation of heat. So destruction इसके वजह से person thermoregulate नहीं हो पाएगा, and it also stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. So anterior hypothalamus stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, whereas the posterior hypothalamus is related with. So you can easily correlate the two functions, anterior and posterior hypothalamus. These are just opposite of each other. At least you can remember its name wise. So you can easily correlate the functions of the paraventricular supraoptic, then suprachiasmatic, very important. Preoptic के बारे में मैंने बताया, it is some specific, basically it is sexually dimorphic nucleus and regulate the release of gonadotropin. Then I told you that there is so much close relation with the anterior and posterior. Lateral hypothalamus and medial hypothalamus, these are very much in reverse of each other. So lateral hypothalamus stimulation induces eating. Okay, I think it is the medial hypothalamus is the satiety center. It is, and this is basically lateral hypothalamus is the hunger center. So this is the hunger and satiety center that are present in this. Then there is mammillary body. They receives input from the hippocampal formation. They project to the anterior nucleus of thalamus, and that's why these are basically related with the limbic system. ये limbic system से correlated हैं. We will read limbic system का कुछ components हम लोग hypothalamus chapter में पढ़ेंगे, and we will read limbic system in detail and their functions, their examples in the chapter of limbic system. And arcuate nucleus also are the endocrine nucleus basically, but they produce hypothalamic releasing factors, and they contain dopaminergic neurons that inhibit the prolactin release. So ये भी इसका role है. Ventromedial is also basically it is also ventromedial is the. So हम लोग food intake का regulation थोड़ा detail में पढ़ेंगे, so that whatever I told you should not confuse you. Related to the connections of hypothalamus. अब हम लोग connections of hypothalamus के बारे में. These connections means how the different portions of the central nervous system they are connected. They are connected to hypothalamus, which regions of hypothalamus, and then how the different regions they are projecting to there. So for that we will read the afferent connections and efferent connections. When we say the afferent connections, so then we will read about the origin and termination. Afferent connections means termination in the hypothalamic nuclei, and origin means origin from somewhere else other than the hypothalamus. So there is a first one is the retinohypothalamic, जिसके बारे में अभी हमने थोड़ी देर पहले बताया था कि they are terminating the suprachiasmatic nucleus and they originate from the ganglion cell of the retina. You know, you must be knowing till now that the ganglion cell is the only cell in the retina which are having the action potential generating potential, जो कि एक्शन पोटेंशियल जनरेट कर सकता है रेटिना में, जो अभी हम लोगों ने विजुअल पाथवे और विजुअल सिस्टम में इस बात को अभी तक पढ़ लिया होगा. द रेटिनोहाइपोथैलेमिक ट्रैक्ट it helps for the supra or because of its connection it helps in the maintaining the circadian rhythm. Another is the inferior mammillary peduncle that originate from the tegmental nuclei of midbrain and they terminate in the mammillary body. ये है inferior mammillary peduncle. Then is the thalamo-hypothalamic nuclei. The tract thalamo-hypothalamic, it is originated from the dorsomedial and the midline thalamic nuclei and they terminate in the lateral and posterior hypothalamic. It has lot of connection, lot of functions of the thalamo-hypothalamic, but still I will tell you that thalamo-hypothalamic का एक बहुत important role है to maintain in the sleep wake cycle. कल जो हम चर्चा कर रहे थे थैलेमस के फंक्शन में स्लीप का, so then today we or in the hypothalamus functions of hypothalamus I will tell you that how this thalamo-hypothalamic correlation they help for the maintaining the sleep and wake. It is other than this circadian rhythm. ये जो स्लीप वेक साइकिल है वो सर्कैडियन रिदम के अलावे दूसरा अलग सेपरेट फंक्शन. देन देयर इज अ पैलिडो हाइपोथैलेमिक मींस ग्लोबस पैलिडस से हाइपोथैलेमस की तरफ. ग्लोबस पैलिडस का जो पोर्शन है दैट इज कॉल्ड एज द लेंटिकुलर न्यूक्लियस. पैलिडो हाइपोथैलेमिक ट्रैक्ट, इट्स ओरिजिन फ्रॉम द basal ganglia, basically the lentiform nucleus of basal ganglia, and they terminate in the ventromedial hypothalamic nucleus. There is cerebello-hypothalamic tract also, that is from the cerebellum, deep nucleus of cerebellum, and they send the signal to the ventral and posterior nuclei of hypothalamus. And the prefrontal hypothalamic, that is the prefrontal cortex or the frontal cortex, it is also called as orbitofrontal cortex, and they terminate in the prefrontal cortex. Basically, ये वाले में hypothalamus टर्मिनेशन में होना चाहिए, वो यहाँ पे आया नहीं है इस टेबल में, so I will see and check it further. Coming to the efferent tracts, it should be written efferent tracts. That is from hypothalamus से कौन से efferents है, it should be efferent, ये होगा यहाँ पे. Hypothalamus से जो efferent tract है, that is hypothalamo hypophyseal tract. Its origin from the supraoptic and preoptic nuclei and supply to the posterior pituitary, and you know it is called as the neurohypophysis. Then tubulohypophyseal tract, basically the arcuate and the periventricular nuclei, and they terminate in the medial eminence or the infundibular stop. Hypothalamocerebellar tract, they originate from the lateral lateral and the posterior hypothalamus, and they terminate in the deep cerebellar cortex. Mammilohypothalamic, that it means start from the mammillothalamic and goes to the anterior nuclei of thalamus. It is the part of the limbic system. Then mammilotegmental, that is mammillary body to the tegmental body of the nucleus, and then descending autonomic fibers, the paraventricular, lateral hypothalamic area and posterior hypothalamic area, and they terminate in the autonomic cranial nerve nuclei. What the cranial nerve nuclei कौन से autonomic हैं, like parasympathetic के जो हमारे हैं 3, 7, 9 and 10, and the spinal cord nuclei, it means it is talking about the all the thoracic and the lumbar as well as the sacral plexus. Sacral is the parasympathetic, thoracic and lumbar are the sympathetic. Hypothalamic prefrontal nuclei, basically they go to the prefrontal cortex from the hypothalamic prefrontal tract. So these are the various efferent connections of the hypothalamus. So in सब के बाद we will read about the functions of hypothalamus. So what we have read today, I just want to revise because ज़्यादा डोज हो जाएगा तो you will get bored. So hypothalamus, आज हमने पढ़ा anatomical aspects, हमने अभी तक क्या क्या पढ़े हैं? हमने हाइपोथैलेमस के का खुद का एग्जैक्ट लोकेशन कहाँ पे है, ये किस तरह का दिखता है, एक फंक्शंस को थोड़ा ब्रॉडली देख लिया है अभी हमने, देन इसके रिलेशंस के बारे में पढ़े हैं, एंड देन इंडिविजुअल न्यूक्लियाई का हम लोग रीजन वाइज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन देखा, एंड देन वी रेड अबाउट द वेरियस कनेक्शंस। तो हमने वेरियस कनेक्शंस को देखे। So these are the various afferent and efferent connections we have read. So I am stopping for today, and